Hi everyone, my name is Ibn and welcome to this video on Planet Coaster 2. In about 5 days the new game is getting released and Frontier was so kind to give me early access to the game so that I had time to play with it a bit. I'm gonna start by saying that I'm not a coaster nerd, so I don't feel comfortable about talking much about the rides and the tracked rides and the flumes, because I don't go to theme parks that much. I always like themed areas. I'm a huge fan of those, but theme parks are less my thing, so I don't feel as comfortable to talk about that part of the game. So I'm going to solely focus myself on things like scenery and the path tool and flat rides, because I know those better than roller coasters and flumes and slides and stuff like that. So in the background you'll see a small build that I've made during this week of early access, and I'm just gonna talk a bit about the game and about what I liked, what I didn't like, and what the future of the game is going to be on my channel. Now, starting off with one of the most important features in my eyes is scaling. Scaling was always a feature that I personally thought was going to be kind of a gimmick. I played Prehistoric Kingdom and scaling is a thing in that game, but when it comes to it, I don't use it as much as I thought I would, because if you have pieces that are of the correct size, you don't spend a lot of your time resizing pieces. And the same basically goes for Planet Zoo. I don't miss it. Sometimes I wish like I could resize a piece, but most of the time I don't really miss it. This is not the case with Planet Coaster 2. I noticed that I spend a lot of my time using the resize tool, and it opened up a lot of creative new ways to play with the pieces, which I really enjoyed. I think it was a major part of what I liked about the game, because it opens up so many different things. There's in the background you'll see a cannon at a certain point, and that is used by making tons of pieces smaller. The cannonballs are used by making a beach ball smaller to the size of a cannonball. So like all of these things are really cool. Now, I do have to admit it's a little bit of a double-edged sword though, because whilst I'm very happy that scaling is a thing, I do feel like it kind of feels like an extra step during building because of the fact that all the pieces are so big. Now, what the game currently does not have, and that's probably because it's an early access build and not something that's going to be the case forever, I hope, is Ansel support. That was kind of a bummer for me, because as much as I like the graphics in terms of the technology that it puts forth, I really like the fact that indoor buildings are dark and you can actually do things with that. The water looks incredibly crisp, everything looks very nice. What kind of bothers me is the oversaturated look and the very bloomy look of it all. And that's not really a critique on the game, it's just a visual style they went for, and it's not a visual style that I like as much. So for me it's not a big deal, and it's not something that I would tell Frontier to change, but I do want Ansel support so that I can get rid of the very vibrant look and feel, and I can tone it down a little bit. Because for me that's the only thing that's kind of holding me back from playing the game a lot, is that I don't really like how vibrant and how bright it looks, and if I can tone it down a little bit so it gets to look a little bit more like a realistic game, then I'm completely fine with it. But again, I assume this is something that will come either with the release or after the release, and that's not a big deal for me. In terms of the pieces, we get a bunch of really cool items. There's a lot of stuff that comes over from Planet Zoo, which I'm really happy with. A lot of the grunge pieces are here. There's a lot of beams. There's a lot of metal items, stone items, and when there were pieces where I was like, oh no, this piece isn't from this piece isn't in the game. It was a piece that I used all the time in Planet Zoo. Then I realized, hey, scaling is a thing, and now I can use it the way it was. Like, Planet Zoo comes with an entire plaster set, which is incredible and has a lot of really cool pieces. But the Planet Coaster set doesn't always come with the smaller sized panel pieces, which at first I was a little bit afraid of, and I was like, oh no, why isn't this here? But then I quickly realized, oh, of course, scaling is a thing. I don't need a small plaster piece, I can just make it myself, which is really, really cool. What I like about the themes are, I love the resort theme. The Viking theme is really cool and very flexible as well. The aquatic theme is also really cool. The only theme that I would personally would have switched out for a different theme is the mythology theme. As much as I like it, I feel like it has a lot more DLC potential, and that probably, with all the focus on water parks that was in the campaigns and in the marketing and everywhere, I feel like a pirate theme probably would have worked better. And that's the one thing that I'm currently missing, and it's also a bit what's keeping me from already thinking about what park am I going to build, or at least starting to build the park, because I was able to create a little pirate scene here, and I'm quite proud of what I have, but it's not exactly the way I want it. So in general, I had a relatively positive feel about the game, but that took a few days, and I'm gonna talk a bit about the main critique that I have when it comes to the game. And that's the fact that I feel that Frontier is missing a kind of playbook, or a kind of guidebook, or a kind of basic rule sets that they need to apply to every Planet game that they have, because there's a lot of things that was included in Planet Coaster after a few updates. There's a lot of things that were in Planet Zoo and were added in updates to Planet Zoo that currently aren't in the game, and I feel like those are things that will be given as feedback almost at the start of the release. Like, it feels like some of these things are so obvious, and the community has already given that feedback in the past to both Planet games, that I kind of feel that it's weird that these things are not in the game. I'm talking about some very simple things that do make the building process a little bit more tedious, and do give it a little bit more, like, it makes it all take more time than it's supposed to be. For instance, in the build that I had, if you grab a piece, for instance a rock piece, you recolor that piece to a different color, you place a few of those rocks down, then you move on to a different rock with the same material, that color gets reverted to the original color. And this is one of those things that feels like it should be in a guidebook on Planet games. It feels like it's something that should be in a rule set, that when you develop a Planet game, when you have a piece of one material and you colored it and you pick another piece, well, that piece has to maintain the color of your last piece. That makes so much sense. It's one of those things where I feel like this should be in, and I shouldn't be asking for this afterwards. And there's a few little things like that. Like in Planet Zoo, when you do shift control, you select everything. When you do control select, if you do shift select, you select everything. If you do control select, you can select everything but the thing that you've selected right now. It's a really useful tool, and in this game it just is. It's the same for both. If you shift select or control select, it gets the same result. And that's one of those things where I feel like I'm used to one way of building now, and you're forcing me to adjust to a building system that's not as good as what I had. And for me, that's like one of those things, like there needs to be like a rule set that Frontier can follow, so that they can use that and make it easy for people to switch between Planet games. Because at this point in time, I felt like I had another small learning curve between Planet Zoo and Planet Coaster, and it shouldn't have been there in my eyes. On top of that, and this is a critique that has been said a lot already, and I don't envy the task that they had as someone who builds UIs for a living. I'm a front-end developer, but it clearly shows that the UI is trying to become a middle ground between console and PC, and that sometimes creates extra steps where there shouldn't be any extra steps. If you change the color of an item, you need to press confirm, otherwise it just reverts to the same color again, to the old color again, which is really annoying, and I really forgot it a lot of the time. When you select a bunch of things, instead of immediately being able to do something with that selection, you have to confirm the selection. It's all of these extra steps that probably have meaning in a console-based environment, that just cause a lot of issues and annoyances, and it just becomes like a lot of extra steps, which meant that I couldn't build as fast as I usually build, and that's kind of annoying for me. Again, I don't envy the task that the UI designers of Frontier had in this case. I don't think it's entirely possible to create one UI that functions well for both console and PC. I think that's pretty much impossible, and I think that maybe the solution would have been to just make two kinds of UI, one that works for console, one that works for PC, and don't try to mesh both of them together. I don't know for sure. I don't know what the right answer is here, but I do feel like the UI and the build process is a little bit hindered by the fact that it's trying to be both a console game and a PC game at the same time, and that's a bit of a shame. Now, I hope that I've been able to be both positive and critical of the game, because I don't want this to sound like this video is overly negative. There's a core of a good game here, and we know that Frontier is the kind of company that will take feedback at heart. So as long as we give it to them in a constructive way, I think a lot of the kinks will be ironed out before the end of the year, I hope. And that's also what brings me to the future of the game on my channel. I do have a project in mind called Fable World, which is a theme park centered all around storytelling about myth, legends, fables, stuff like that, which I really like. But as the game is right now, I do feel like my building process is hampered a bit by a few of the choices and a few of the little inconsistencies with the other Planet games, which means that I don't feel like I can fully commit yet to building that park. So Planet Coaster is going to be a part of my channel for sure, because again, I like building themed areas, and this game allows me to do that and gives me a bunch of attractions that I kind of wish I had in Planet Zoo as well. But I do think the game really does need to grow a little bit before I feel confident enough to start tackling a complete park. So for now, I'm going to stick to the occasional diorama builds like I did here, and hope that I can do a lot of stuff with that and kind of get into the game before I start a full-on project. With the announcement that there's also going to be another Planet Zoo DLC next year, which I totally wasn't expecting. I also want to keep Planet Zoo alive on this channel, which I was going to do anyway, so it's going to be a hard time to figure out what I want to do at what point. But yeah, that's pretty much the future of the game. I'm going to occasionally build a little diorama, see if I can start making the things that I want to make, see what the rest of the community builds and be inspired by that, and slowly build towards kind of mood board that I then can use for Fable World at the end of the day. So yeah, that's been my impression of Planet Coaster 2. I hope you all enjoyed it. I hope it gave you an idea of what the game is going to be. I'm quite positive about it. As I mentioned, I do think there's a few kinks that need to be ironed out. Probably a few of them will already be fixed by the time it releases. Others will probably be fixed in the coming months. So, but overall, I think for me at least, for what I want to do in this game, I think this game already has a lot of good potential, and knowing Frontier and how they work, I can only assume that it's going to get better after this. So that was it. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you so much to Frontier for letting me play with the game early on. That really is always very cool. So thank you all so much. See you next time. Bye.